I tell you what, the day started. So it started today with a 6-hour journey up to Middlesbrough. We left at about 12:30 this afternoon, this lunchtime, and we got to Middlesbrough. We just parked up at the Riverside Stadium actually at 6:10. We then got around the ground. It turns out that actually I didn't have accreditation to come into the stadium. But Middlesbrough were very kind. They allowed me into the stadium, even though that wasn't the case. And so I wasn't technically supposed to be here tonight, which maybe, I don't know, if I'd have ended up in a hotel watching that, I don't know if that would have been better or worse. But my point is that journey is a journey that those Norwich City fans, 600 of them or so, 600 to 800 of them, made too this afternoon on coaches, in cars, on trains. And to get served up with that terrible performance, humiliation here at the Riverside Stadium is unacceptable, and it's unacceptable for everyone, and everyone should be looking to take responsibility and accountability. And to be fair, Angus Gunn came out, he apologised to the fans. That is the absolute bare minimum that they deserve tonight. It was so poor, so abject, defensively at sea, individual errors, an inability to take chances. It was the greatest hits of Norwich City's 2022-2023 season. The difference is perhaps Middlesbrough punished them a lot more ruthlessly than any other team at this level has done. But it's the type of result that actually I think most Norwich fans probably won't be surprised by. And that is a damning indictment on this group of players who has been expensively assembled, who wage-wise has a lot of money ploughed into them, ploughed into these players. And the squad is imbalanced. It's not good enough. There's no heart to it, no soul to it. And you end up with results like tonight where they've been beaten so comprehensively, and it almost makes you fearful that actually getting into the playoffs and having to come up like a side against Middlesbrough, the quality that they have, it's a wake-up call, and it should serve as a wake-up call to everybody just how big that gap was. And actually, I could stand here and I could dissect all of the goals, and I don't really think that anyone wants that, if I'm being totally honest. It was a performance that will make a lot of people feel angry. But to be honest, I'm less inclined to speak about what happened on the pitch tonight and more inclined to speak about those people in the stands, all of whom will have spent money to come and watch this tonight, not just on the match ticket, on travel, on food. Some of them will be staying in Middlesbrough in the northeast tonight. They deserve, frankly, better than that. They deserve a performance that matches what they've shown in terms of commitment, in terms of energy, in terms of quality. That's such a disappointing performance. A draw here tonight would have taken Norwich fifth. It would have changed the conversation. A lot of people would have been feeling incredibly positive, likely about the final four games, given the way that they line up. And instead, we stood here probably talking about the same deficiencies within this Norwich City group. As I said, it was, if you were to put all of the greatest hits of this season into a game, it was that one. Just poor defending, individual errors, and inability to take chances, and an inevitable wilt throughout the whole team in their performance, that drop-off that we've come to expect. And it gets to the heart of the point, which is this: when this Norwich City team matches a side who's willing to raise their levels, who's willing to show a bit more, for maybe old-fashioned cliche terms, and I don't really buy into these necessarily, but when a team wants it more, they have a little bit more oomph or gusto about them. This Norwich City side don't stand up to that test, and that is so disappointing. And you see this a lot of teams who drop out of the Premier League. The scarring runs a lot deeper than people expect. The quality isn't as good as people expect. And you end up with this, which is a real mess of recruitment over 3 or 4 years, recruitment for different styles. Daniel Farke had a very clear style in the last championship season. They tried to change it when they got up to the Premier League, spent a lot of money trying to do that, bought players who didn't prove to be good enough. Then he went down Dean Smith's cycle again, wanted to go in a different way of playing, be more adaptable, be more tactically flexible, have a bit more physicality. And now we're here. And you get players from all 3 of those cycles pushed together into a group, and that's what you get. Players who, some of whom will feel they should be in the Premier League, some of whom feel they're good enough to play in the Premier League, but as a collective, just so short, and that's the best way to describe it. And a lot of people will be angry tonight, and I'm probably not one of them, if I'm honest. I think this is kind of not shocking in terms of I've seen all of these characteristics and all of these traits within Norwich City all season long. And actually the fact that they find themselves 8th in the Championship, 1 point off the top 6 as it stands, obviously that can grow tomorrow to 4, is more of an indictment on the quality of the second tier this season rather than anything that Norwich City have achieved. The levels between the top 4, which are Burnley, Sheffield United, Luton and Middlesbrough, are so great to the rest of the division, which is much for a muchness, that actually whoever finishes in 5th and 6th, I feel, are going to have a really tough ordeal. And I think ultimately it comes back to what I said, and I think I said this on a podcast relatively recently, that everyone's talking about the playoffs, the players, David Wagner, some fans, and I understand that because in many ways they're paid to do that, right? But to what end? What does Norwich City get in the playoffs achieve? It means they get beat over 2 legs, probably, against a side who's proven themselves to be much better than them. Defeatist, yes, but also a reflection of what we've seen this season. You can only go off that. They haven't been good enough against the top teams. They've struggled against the bottom teams. And actually, a lot of the goals tonight were of their own making. Individual errors, again, we find ourselves talking about, and you can change personnel in the defence and nothing really alters. So that probably leads you to talk about the overall quality within the side and where that is at the moment as well. And as I said, it's a squad that's been expensively assembled to win this division, to get out of this division. Those were the expectations that were set on it by Stuart Webber, by Dean Smith. Internal expectations they were. They weren't expectations that the fans had. There weren't expectations that we had. There were expectations that were set internally. So you have to measure this Norwich City group against that. 4 games to go. They're 8th in the table. Yes, they're 1 point off the playoffs, but they are so far short of where everybody felt they would be. And that is a damning indictment and should be a damning indictment on everyone at all levels. And 4 games left. Yes, Norwich might win them all. They might finish in the top 6. Everything might feel rosy again. Might's doing a lot of heavy lifting there, to be honest. But also, again, then what? You come up against Luton, you come up against Middlesbrough, both of whom have beat Norwich twice this season and beaten them twice pretty comfortably. Where's the enjoyment in that? Where's the fun in that? And I think that's probably where we are now, a willingness for this season to end and actually, probably a clearer picture after tonight of where this season exactly will go and where it will be. QPR next Wednesday, who are absolutely scrapping for their lives. Norwich don't have a particularly great record there, but there needs to be some display of response, if only in terms of mentality and in terms of enthusiasm. Because how do they change it? They don't have the personnel. And that's another point. I know a lot of people will talk about the injuries that this group has at the moment. And they do. And it's a fair argument. And, it is mitigation, absolutely mitigation. But it shouldn't be an excuse for that performance, which, again, for points, particularly in those 10 minutes before half-time, the lack of leadership, the lack of clear heads was astounding for a group of players who should be much better than that. It's 1-0 with 5 minutes to go before half-time. And 4-1 when the half-time whistle blow. It was just a capitulation of their own making. And it sums up why they are where they are. It's that self-implosion, that ability to wilt and to find ways to lose games and find ways to concede goals. It's so damaging and it's so draining and it's so disappointing. If you have a group of players who you believe are the best in the Championship, they should not be making the individual errors as consistently as Norwich City are. So we can distill that down. What is it? Is it quality of the players? I'm using this internally. They don't believe that's the case. They don't believe it's the quality of the players. So is it the tactical structure? Well, we've had 2 coaches and it's been the same thing all season. Those individual errors have persisted. So are both coaches getting it wrong? That's tough. Is it a mentality point? Now, this is probably where we find ourselves. Is it a combination of all 3? Quite possibly. And I think there's just this. And again, I'm not saying anything new here, particularly. I don't feel like, but there's a staleness around this group. Football works in cycles, right? We know how it works. You see teams have really successful spells. They have downward spells. It feels like we have reached the end of a cycle. I've exhausted this until the cows have come home on here. But it's true, and that is the fundamental aspect of it. There are players in there who look tired, and I don't mean physically, I just mean mentally. You've got players in there who have achieved 2 promotions, 2 relegations as well. a lot of emotional energy goes into a lot of those things. And I think we're seeing the result of that. As I said, the scarring's probably a little bit deeper than everyone felt it would be last summer. The quality isn't as high as everyone thought it would be last summer. You only have to see that with the attacking quality that Middlesbrough had tonight compared to what Norwich City had on the pitch. And, that was the case. They were ruthless. I think at one point they scored 4 goals with 4 shots on target, but actually pretty much all of them had come from defensive errors. And it's so predictable for this group of players to have lost a game in that manner. I think it's their biggest championship defeat since, unless someone's going to correct me, Sheffield United away under Daniel Farke towards the end of that first season in charge. They got beaten quite heavily there. And again, that was the same really. It was change and that feeling of change was afoot, and that's where we are again. And actually the frustration is that this is happening in a league where Norwich City should be doing much better and have a history of doing much better. And yes, that sets an expectation. And to an extent, that can act as a burden. And I understand all of those things. But equally, you have to have the quality, the mentality, the ability to stand up to all of those things. Because if you don't, then you have no chance at this level of getting promoted. And I also think if you're not honest and if you're not a group of players capable of standing up to adversity, then results like tonight happen, and results like we've seen this season happen. You get teams who are hungrier and, maybe aren't as talented, but it's that old adage, isn't it? Work hard, hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard. And I don't even necessarily think it's been a kind of unwillingness to work hard. I think there's been a subconscious thing that has existed all season. That mentality hasn't been quite right, and that's what they've struggled with. They've struggled to shake it off. They've struggled to dust off all of those aspects that we've spoken about so exhaustively this season, and you get here. Now, yes, look, the table tonight, and I know the riposte from some people will be, well, look, they're 1 point outside the playoffs. There's 4 games to go, but actually Mill will beat Preston tomorrow. If Coventry beat QPR, if Blackburn beat Hull, all of those results are feasible. Norwich will be 9th in the table. They'll be 4 points off the top 6. They essentially find themselves back in the position they were before Good Friday. It's now 1 win in 7. I'm finding it very tough to navigate away to the playoffs, let alone through the playoffs. And that's a difficult thing. And actually, it feels like if they did finish in the top 6, it would be used somehow as to mask what a disappointment this season has been. That's not me saying that, they shouldn't finish in the top 6, because clearly that's the aspiration that we all have for them and the hope we all have for them. But equally, if they don't do that, clearly it's profoundly disappointing, but also it gives them time to properly reset this, and it does need a proper reset. It's been said all season. In terms of tonight, look, the game, I actually felt Norwich started quite well. Josh Sargent missed a crucial chance, and then about a minute later, Aaron Ramsey scored. I will touch upon the celebration. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I thought it was disrespectful, to be completely honest. I don't really understand what's happened or what he thinks has happened here. But the Norwich fans didn't merit that. A lot of them who were incredibly supportive to him, who he spoke glowingly about, actually, when I spoke to him after Blackpool earlier on in the season. I don't know if he feels he got some social media abuse because of the injury, and I would say that was more of the situation than aimed at him. Whether it was Dean Smith, which is a theory floated, I don't know. Whether it was the fact that loan was cut short because of the knee injury, I don't know. Only he can tell you. But I felt, considering Norwich City gave him a chance at championship level after what was a pretty bog standard loan at Cheltenham in League One last season, it was mixed. He didn't set the house alight or set the world on fire, sorry. And Norwich gave him a chance to step up. Yes, of course, that was largely Dean Smith. But to then go and celebrate in that fashion, I just felt was unnecessary, pretty petty and quite unprofessional, to be honest. And probably took the shine off what was a really good Middlesbrough performance, because they're an excellent side. They attack with ruthlessness, so much quality in that front four. But that, obviously it makes it a lot easier for them when you defend in the way that you do. And it was really that period before half time. But again, the nature of the performance, Angus Gunn called it embarrassing. I think that sums it up quite well. I wanted to finish as I started, really, by paying a huge respect to those Norwich City supporters who were unbelievable tonight. They were excellent. They stayed, which is miraculous in itself. The game was on TV. We are 250 odd miles away from home here. It's a long old trek to make on a Saturday at 3:00, let alone on a Friday with an 8:00 kickoff. A lot of them will be going back tonight and won't be getting back to the early hours of the morning. They deserve a lot better than what they saw tonight, and actually what they've seen all season. And that ultimately is who the players, who the people responsible at the club will have to answer to. It's those fans who have seen with their own eyes the disappointment that this season has been. But there is still a very, very remote chance. Look, I feel if as I said, the results go in the way I expect them to go tomorrow, 4 points with 4 games left, it's a tall order, particularly with this Norwich City side, who are so inconsistent and so flaky, irrespective of maybe how easy or not people think the fixture list is. So, yeah, there we go. I don't have much more to add than that, really. Just a really dejecting, disappointing, frustrating night here at the Riverside Stadium. The greatest hits of Norwich City's 2022-23 season, and sadly, it won't be one to remember. Plenty more analysis and reaction if you can stomach it, although I completely understand if you can't. Go and enjoy your weekend. We'll be available on pinkin.com. We'll have a podcast for you as well, which we're going to record tomorrow, where obviously we'll reflect on this defeat in much more depth. So make sure you look out for that as well. Hopefully it will be a little bit cathartic for us and for you guys too. We're actually staying overnight in Darlington, so I'm looking forward to getting my head down and forgetting about that, because that was pretty grim. I ended up wishing that I wasn't allowed in tonight, so there we go. Thank you very much for watching. 4 more to go. Thank goodness. See you soon.